Hey guys, welcome to the UFC on Fox 27 breakdown preview, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if I'm qualified enough to consider these things a breakdown, considering I'm just a white belt in Jiu-Jitsu, but I'll do the best I can. So this fight is going to be headlined by Derek Brunson and Jacare Souza, who have fought before in Strikeforce, and the UFC is actually calling it Brunson versus Souza, or Souza versus Brunson too. One of those two, right? But anyway, it got me to wondering do you think if these two guys had fought in Bellator before, do you think the UFC would still call it Souza versus Brunson too? Because I don't know that they would. I think they would just call it Souza versus Brunson and completely forget about the fact that these two had a past. If there's any specific instances of that you guys know of, let me know. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but something tells me that if this fight didn't happen in Strikeforce and it happened in Bellator, I don't think they'd even acknowledge that the first fight ever happened. But we'll get to that. Let's start off with some of the news going around. First off, I guess they're talking about Gunnar Nelson and Darren Till fighting in London. I guess Kavanaugh's saying that it's possible that those two could headline the card there. Which makes headline, I don't know, because it makes you wonder if that's going to be Bisping's retirement fight, right? I think he wants one more. Unless they're going to be in London more than once. I don't know. I just saw a headline or something. But this is a really interesting fight because it's going to be the classic striker versus grappler matchup. And I'm a big believer in Darren Till, especially after what he did to Cowboy. I mean, he's a massive 170-pounder, and he is just something else on the feet. I mean, he's a whole different animal. He's one of those guys that you look at and you can see instant potential in him. Like, when you watch him fight, you're like, there's something there. Like, I expect this kid to do big things in the 170-pound division. There's been a lot of talk about him fighting Mike Perry too, which I understand it's an exciting fight, but Till's coming off a big win. I mean, a big win over Cowboy. And Perry just lost. Who the fuck did he lose to? Borrachina? I think that's who he lost to. But anyway, I've got interest in seeing that fight. I mean, Perry versus Till would probably be more exciting, right? But Nelson's kind of had a back and forth career, kind of, like in the UFC at least. I mean, he's a high-level fighter, great on the ground. Like, you know that's what he's going to try to do to Till. It'll be interesting to see if a guy like that can get Till to the ground, though, I guess, right? But if it stays on the feet, I mean, Jesus Christ, good luck. Good luck trying to fend off Darren Till, because he is a whole different animal. He's got a style that reminds me a lot of Conor McGregor's. If you guys get a chance, watch him fight. He's exciting. I really believe he's the next big thing at 170. Like, he's the next problem in that weight class. Speaking of problems, he calls himself a problem. Kamaru Usman's another guy to watch out for, but we can talk about him another time. Next thing I want to talk about is the fact that Francis Ngannou said he's going to take some time off. I don't know for how long, but considering what he just went through and the run that he's been on, he probably just had a reality check. I mean, obviously he did, but it probably hit him pretty hard. So it probably is good to take some time off and get your head right and rebound from a loss like that. Because, I mean, after the first round, when his energy was gone, there was absolutely nothing he could do. And he's got to go back to the drawing board and work on some fundamentals, especially on the ground. Like, I don't think, if I'm him, I'm just going into camp and working strictly jiu-jitsu and wrestling. And I'd especially be focusing on things off of your back, because he wasn't moving his hips. He had a lot of trouble generating enough energy to get back to his feet, and when he does, Stipe was just holding his head down. It was like, a lot of that probably is fatigue, right? Like, he definitely has to learn how to conserve his energy better, but a lot of it was just like fundamental pieces missing from his game that he needs to clean up. And the break is good too for the psychological aspect of the sport. Because, like I said, a loss like that is probably devastating to him. A guy who's been on this tear and he just walked in against the highest level of competition that he's seen so far and he didn't just lose, he got dominated. Like, he got completely outclassed for 4 out of the 5 rounds, and he really got to feel what it was like to really lose. It's not like I said, he didn't lose by knockout. He just got smushed for 4 rounds. And then the next, I saw they're talking about, I don't know if this is official or not, but I saw that supposedly Matt Brown and Carlos Condit are fighting, which is a great fight for the fans. And I thought Brown was done. He's coming off that awesome highlight reel finish of Diego Sanchez where he elbowed him in the back of the head, knocked him out. And I was reading through the article, and he was saying, oh, my kids love it when I fight. And I'm like, yeah, but your fighting is going to ruin your life later. Because Matt Brown takes a lot of damage when he fights. And I'm sure his kids do think it's exciting. I think they're young. Like, I think he picked the one up in his last win. Obviously, they're thinking stuff like that's exciting. The problem is when you get older and your kids want to enjoy their time with you and you can't remember your fucking name or their name. Matt Brown is one of my favorite fighters to watch ever because he's exciting. And this is going to be a good fight if Condit and Brown fight. I'm going to watch them fight. As a fan, I'm a huge fan of this fight. But looking out for Brown's well-being, I don't think it's smart for him to keep fighting. He takes a lot of punishment, man. And my thoughts on retirement, I mean, granted, I'm obviously not a fighter, right? Like, what the fuck do I know? But when you start thinking about retirement, it's time to walk out the door. Like, it's time to go. Because you're fighting these fucking animals. That thought hasn't even crossed their mind. Retiring, you've got these kids who are storming up through the ranks, and the only thing they care about is being the best in the world. When you start talking about retiring, that means one foot's out the door, and you've already started thinking about the possibility of not even fighting anymore. And there are these killers coming up through, and especially the way the game's evolving now. Man, when you start thinking like that, you got to wonder where his head's at. And I know he's a warrior. Like, he's going to go out and he's going to fight his heart out. I have no doubt about that. But you've got these kids who the only thing they give a fuck about is winning a title. It's going to be hard to compete. And maybe if he just likes to fight and he just wants to fight, I mean, whatever. How are you ever going to stop a guy like that? But if he's talking about wanting to be competitive within the 170-pound division, especially guys I just talked about like Darren Till, whose sole focus is winning the title, and a lot of potential, a lot of skill, and a lot of power, man, I'm of the opinion that he should get out, but I'm not Matt Brown. So it's an interesting fight. I mean, I think it'll be a very fan-friendly fight. I don't think anyone who watches that will be disappointed, but it makes me concerned for the fighter South. Condit a little bit too, right? Because he's already pondered with retirement, took a little bit of time off, came back, whatever, lost his fight to Neil Magny. Probably a little bit of octagon rust there, ring rust. So it'll be interesting to see how he looks against Matt Brown, who did just come off a big win. But again, over a guy in Diego Sanchez who's taken quite a bit of punishment throughout his career too. All right, so let's move on to the actual fight card. The first fight, I'm just going to do the main card. And the first fight on the main card is going to be Drew Dober versus Frank Camacho. He's a guy, usually, like, I look these guys, I'm like always browsing through their records on Wikipedia, and I can't find a Wikipedia entry for him anywhere. You got to go to, like, ShareDog or some shit like that to find a record on him. Anyway, lightweight fight, which is Shark Tank, as everyone knows. I mean, bunch of killers in that weight division. And Drew Dober is a guy who has been doing Muay Thai since he's been like 14 years old. And he was like a 2-time world champion for amateur Muay Thai, I believe, or something like that. So he's a really credentialed striker. And purple belt in BJJ, I think. Wrestled in high school, so he's got some experience there. Like, he knows what the fuck he's doing. But he's coming off a first-round KO of Josh Berkman, who has been around the game. I mean, Jesus, when did he debut? I've got it written down here. One sec. He debuted in 2003, and he made his UFC debut in 2005. And he was really good then. I remember him going on like a little tear. And guy who's been around the game for a long time, but a guy who's probably also on his way out the door. Regardless, good win for Dober. Probably good win to get his confidence back, because the fight before that he lost to Oliver Aubin-Mercier. Is that how you pronounce his name? I think that's right. Mercier. Anyway, got submitted by a rear naked choke, and that was a fight where I mean, as credentialed as he is on the feet, that was a fight where he really struggled to find his timing, especially in the first round. And he kind of got it going, and then he came out and clipped Oliver in the second, and he went into the guard, and then Oliver, I think he attempted a leg lock. He went for an omoplata, and then he went for the leg lock, and he wound up on top. and then he just slowly worked his way to his back and overwhelmed him on the ground. But that's a fight where he was probably expecting to go out and kind of dominate on the feet in the first round, and Oliver kind of got his timing down early and started landing some shots, and I think it threw him off a little bit. And then came out, clipped him with a big, I think he hit him with a big right hand, and he put Oliver down. But once he crawled into his guard, I mean, Mercier is so fucking good on the ground. Like, that's not where you want to be with him. And just got outclassed and unfortunately got tapped out. But I'm a big fan of Auburn Mercier. I shouldn't say unfortunately. Like, I'm not biased towards either of these guys. But he is... okay, let's go through his last 3 fights. So I just said he came off a KO win over Berkman. Before that, he lost via rear naked choke, I think in the second round to Auburn Mercier. And then he beat Jason Gonzalez via KO in the first round. And he just kind of outclassed him. And when he lands, he's got some serious power. Like, you saw when he landed on Gonzalez, you were like, oh, fuck. He got him up against the fence and just dropped bombs on him until he put him away and the ref stopped it. So he's going to be looking to keep this fight on the feet. And from what I've seen from Camacho so far, I'm guessing he's going to too. He is 21-5. He's got 1 win in the UFC and 1 loss. And I think his loss is to the Leech. Yeah, I'm going to pronounce it. This is wrong, I think, but it's Jingyan Li. But I think it's really pronounced like Yinglong La or something. Yinglong La, I think is how you actually pronounce his name. But anyway, that kid's got a ton of potential, and he's riding like a 4-fight win streak. And I think that he took that fight on short notice, and it was his UFC debut. And most fights that you take, most of your UFC debuts do come on short notice because you got to take that call when the UFC rings you up. Like, you can't turn that down. Those opportunities, you usually don't have a favorable set of circumstances when the UFC calls you, and you just got to jump on it. But Camacho, he just came off a split decision win over Damian Brown in a fight that, I mean, was really back and forth and exciting fight. But he worries me fighting a guy like Dober because Dober is so good at... I mean, like, unless he can kind of do what Auburn Mercier did and get his timing off. But even then, you saw in the second round, Dober came out and landed. And Camacho is a guy who gets hit a lot. I mean, if you go back and watch your Damian Brown fight, like, he lands and he's got a really strong right cross and stuff, and he sets up the jab pretty well, but he also gets hit. So that concerns me in this fight in particular, especially fighting a guy who's got so much fucking striking experience. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to come out and take it to you. And I don't know. Like I said, he's got the power, and he could end the fight, or maybe like, if he has to get this fight to the ground, in my opinion, if he wants to win, and he has to disrupt the timing of what Dober wants to do early, and he's got to be able to impose his will on him early and kind of change the momentum of the fight into his favor before they get into the second round. Because if you let Dober start setting things up and start landing, it's gonna be a long fucking night for you. I like Dober in this fight. And I think if Camacho, I think he's a brown belt, but I think even if he gets him to the ground, you're going to see Dober work his way back up and kind of ride that confidence off the Berkman KO. And I think he's just going to outpoint him. And I think Camacho's got a chin, though. Like, if you watch that Damian Brown fight, they were going back and forth, and he can take a shot. But I would expect this fight to either end in a knockout or a unanimous decision win for Dober. Anything can happen in the fight game, though, right? Like, I'm usually dead wrong on half these fucking picks. This is just what I think is going to happen. The next fight on the card is Gregor Gillespie and Jordan Rinaldi. And Gillespie is a guy who wrestled at Edinburgh University. And he's 10-0 right now. I think he's got 3 fights in the UFC. Obviously won them all. I think his first fight was a unanimous decision win. Yeah, it was over Galico Franco. There were some things that concerned me in that fight, but if you watch his next 2 fights, he really cleaned it up. Like, a lot of the shots in MMA, like, your traditional wrestling shot doesn't always work because the distance is so far away in MMA. Like, you have to learn how to use your striking to set up your takedowns. And he was like, I think he just has that like wrestler mentality where he's going to outwork you, and he kind of played to his advantage, and he kind of outclassed this kid on the ground in this fight. And it's a good thing he cleaned everything up, because now his striking looks really crisp. I mean, he's got some power in his hands, and I'm biased towards the guy because, I mean, he wrestled an hour and a half north of where I live, you know, or where I grew up. But like I said, really clean combinations, and he mixes his wrestling in really well now. Like, that was one thing that concerned me watching his first fight, and since then, he's really been using his strikes to set up the takedowns, and when he gets on top of you, man, he smothers you, and he's very active. He's not like one of those boring, like, lay and pray guys. I don't really like that term, because I think that a lot of that is strategy, and I think it's smart a lot of the time. But he's active. Like, he's always throwing punches when he's on top of you, and he's outworking you. But this Rinaldi kid just tapped out Alvin Herrera via Von Flue choke, which doesn't happen, I guess, very often, but it seems to be happening more and more, because the Von Flue choke, if I'm not mistaken, happens when you leave your hand latched around the guy's neck, and then they just apply shoulder pressure. It's a weird choke, and your hand kind of gets stuck there. And in this case, this Herrera kid was up against the fence, and it just kind of let Rinaldi drop. Like, it glued his hand, like his hand was stuck like this up against the fence, and it couldn't go anywhere, and he couldn't release it to get out of that choke, so he was able to finish him with the Von Flue. But then he has a unanimous decision loss to Abel Trujillo, and his last fight was in some other organization called Fight Lab. It says he hit a second-round armbar, but I've never even heard of Fight Lab. Unless you fought in, like, World Series of Fighting, UFC, or Bellator, your name's not that well known. So, I mean, he must have been doing pretty good things to get into the UFC, obviously, right? But I'm guessing he's going to try. If you go back through his record, he's got some knockouts on there, but he's a submission artist, and I don't think you're going to be able to tap a guy like Gregor Gillespie out. Obviously, like I just said, I'm biased too. But I think with his wrestling background, he's just going to put you on the mat, keep you on your back, and outwork you. You might see him throw up a couple submission attempts where he gets close, and then I think Gillespie will just scramble out of him and dominate. I think he's going to give him some trouble on the feet, and if it goes to the ground, he's going to realize that Gillespie's wrestling is better than his jiu-jitsu, if that makes sense. And I think you're going to see... Gillespie is going to give you an exciting fight, though. Like, even if it goes to the ground, he's not boring to watch on the ground. I'd expect him to come out and try to stand at first, but especially because Rinaldi is dangerous with submissions, and you don't necessarily want to play that game if you don't have to. And if Gillespie can get things going on the feet early, I think he'll try to do that. But I'm expecting Gillespie to win this fight. I don't know how, though. I would say I'm going to go with the second round KO, but I could also just see him outworking him for 3 rounds. And you know what I mean? Setting up the shots, getting the striking going early, and then landing the takedown and getting some confidence. Maybe this Rinaldi kid will go for a submission or something, and Gillespie will get out of it and just kind of start working, and that'll give him some confidence that he can stay on top and win on top if they start playing the ground game. So I'm taking Gillespie in that fight. Moving on, the next fight is Dennis Bermudez versus Andre Fili. And Dennis Bermudez is a guy who, man, he's been around for a while. He's got like 14 or 15 UFC fights. He's currently ranked. What's he ranked? I think he's ranked, right? 145? I think he's in like the top 15 or something like that. I think he might be 12 if I'm thinking right. But he's coming off a split decision loss to Darren Elkins, who, if you go back and watch that fight, it was a good fight, and Bermudez had his moments, but I felt like he tried to make it a gritty, grindy fight, and Darren Elkins is the last motherfucker that you want to try to get into a grindy type of fight with. He is just like, I mean, his heart and soul was poured into MMA, and he's willing to get into those like tough little brawls, you know what I mean? And I thought he outworked him. I thought it should have been a unanimous decision, but I bitched enough about judging in the last episode, so we'll shy away from it this one. Either way, coming off a loss, Darren Elkins keeps surprising me too. Like, every time I think he's got his hands full with someone, he ends up coming back and winning, or like he'll weather that early storm like he did against Michael Johnson, and he just outworks you. But Bermudez is a durable guy. He wrestled in Bloomfield, I believe. Bloomsburg, sorry. He was a D2 wrestler there, which is located in Pennsylvania. He was ranked 22 in the world while he was there. So he's got a wrestling background. I think when he went to that fight, he kind of expected to out-wrestle Elkins, and it just didn't happen. Elkins is tough, man. He's one of my favorite fighters right now to watch because his fights are going to be exciting. And like I said, he's just blue-collar and gritty. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to... He doesn't give you anything. Like, you got to work for everything that you get against Elkins, and you got to put him to sleep to get rid of him. He's also... He lost to the Korean Zombie. I think he got knocked out, and it was... So if you were in Korea, you were mandated to serve 2 years of military service, I believe, because that's what Korean Superboy was talking about. He just lost to Jeremy Stevens, but he was talking about how he needs to start making his run because he has to go serve for the military. But Bermudez lost via KO to the Korean Zombie when he came back. I think he was out for like 3.5 years, came back, knocked Bermudez out. But before that, he picked up a unanimous decision win over Roni Jason. Am I saying that right? Whenever I see a weird first name like that, is it Honey Jason or Ron? I don't know. I've definitely heard his name before and I've watched him fight, but I don't know how to pronounce his first name. Anyway, so Bermudez is a guy with a wrestling background, and Feely is Feely's gonna probably try to keep it on the feet. He's coming off a win over Artem Lobov where he just kind of outclassed him, hit him with a big head kick in the first round that I thought was gonna put Lobov away. But Artem's a tough guy, man. He's a tough guy to finish. He's one of those Irish motherfuckers, right? Like tougher than nails. People argue that because they saw Conor McGregor tap the Diaz, but Artem's tough, man, and he's. I don't think Artem's ever going to be one of those elite guys, but it's a big win for Feely to pick up. Also, he's coming off right before that. He lost to Calvin Kattar, who just beat Shane Burgos, so that's not really a bad loss. I mean, it's not great. The problem with Feely is Feely's alternated wins and losses throughout his UFC career. Like, it's been win-loss, win-loss, win-loss for him. There might be a string of 2 losses or 2 wins in there somewhere in a row. But the problem is that he's fought Max Holloway. He fought Yair Rodriguez. He fought this Calvin Kattar kid who we just found out is a fucking animal, knocked out Shane Burgos, who had a ton of hype coming around him. And, oh, man, he also lost to Godfredo Pepe, who Shane Burgos beat. So he's got some tough losses, but a lot of potential. He's a Team Alpha Male guy. I never count Team Alpha Male guys out because they got a hell of a camp there, and especially for those lighter weight classes. Like, the athletes that they develop at 145 are amazing. They do such a good job at really, and pretty wrestling heavy camp, right? You got like Chad Mendez out there, Raya Faber's pretty good. But Feely's more of a, well, Cody Garbrandt's there, and he's a striker too, right? I shouldn't say that. They're pretty well-rounded. But Feely, I'm guessing, is going to try to keep this fight on the feet, and this is a close fight. I think this might be fight of the night. Like, if I had to pick a fight for fight of the night, this is the one I would go with, because I think this is going to, obviously, this is what every fight's about, right? But who's going to be able to implement their game plan? And if Feely can start landing early, I think you're going to see him take over. But if you start seeing Bermudez land a takedown and kind of wear on him in the first round, oh, man, it's going to be a tough fight for both guys. I would say whoever wins the first round is going to win the fight. I think whoever gets their game plan going early is going to be the one who dictates the pace of the fight. I don't really like picking fights like this because I really don't know who's going to win. I'm going to go with Feely just because I think he'll get the striking going, and I think that he might give Bermudez some trouble establishing the range that he needs to, because he's kind of a longer guy. Like, I think if he can get the jab going especially, he's going to give him some trouble with getting close enough to get a takedown on him. If Bermudez wins, expect him to get Feely up against the fence and try to land his takedowns there and get out, like, grind him out a little bit, get into some dirty boxing, and then mix the takedown in. Yeah, I'll take Feely. Probably, I'm gonna go. I think this fight's gonna go the distance either way. You might see a split decision. I don't know. This is a really fucking close fight. I'm just going off gut feeling here with Feely, but I could see both guys coming away with a win. Like I said, it's going to come down to whoever has the better game plan and the better setups to implement their game plan in this fight. That sounds like a common sense thing to say, but that's the best I got for this one. So then on to the main event. You got Jacare fighting Derek Brunson, and they've fought before in Strikeforce. Geez, like 6 years ago, though. 6 or 7 years ago? It might be longer than that. But Jacare knocked him out in like, 40, 41 seconds or something like that. And this fight's interesting because you didn't see a lot of material. Like, there's not a lot of content or data to take away from that first fight, right? But this fight's going to be interesting because Brunson's obviously improved, right? Like, he's been on a run. I mean, he beat Lyoto Machida, knocked him out in the first round, knocked out Dan Kelly, and then he lost a weird decision to Anderson Silva, a fight that a lot of people, I think a lot of people thought that Brunson won that fight. I wouldn't disagree with him. I wouldn't agree with him. I thought it was pretty close. But he's also he's got a win over Uriah Hall, Sam Alvey, and Lorenz Larkin, and I think he knocked all three of those guys out. And then he's got his loss to Robert Whittaker peppered in there too. But Whittaker's the champ, right? He's hurt now, which kind of sucks, but we'll get to see Rockhold and Yoel Romero fight, which is still a good fight. Romero's a world-class wrestler, man. I don't know if he's on steroids, but he's on fucking something. Like, there's no way that guy is completely natural. I don't know how he's gaming the system, but it looks to me like he's doing it. Anyway, I learned this about Derek Brunson. He was a competitive cheerleader in high school, along with a wrestler. And he actually got offered a scholarship to go and be a competitive cheerleader, but he took a wrestling scholarship instead. He wrestled at North Carolina at Pembroke. He was D2, All-American 3 times. Just wonder, like, how different his career path would have been if he chose to be a cheerleader, right? I wonder how close that battle was in his head. Like, was he like, I really might go be a cheerleader? Or do you I bet he was just thinking wrestling the whole way, and that was just there because he enjoyed competitive cheerleading. But, man, it makes you wonder, because this kid's a top contender at middleweight. I mean, he's a top 10 guy. He's ranked number 8 right now. Like I said, knocked out a legend in Lyoto Machida, beat Dan Kelly. He's fought Anderson Silva in a fight that he arguably won. Like, what if he never went to wrestle at college? Because high-level wrestling experience like that, even if it's D2, I think helps you tremendously in the UFC, not only by developing your mindset, but by developing your ability to control people on the ground and put the fight where you want it to go. I just listened to the Joe Rogan podcast with Ben Askren, who is probably the most disappointing fighter, him and Fedor, who never fought in the UFC. And Ben Askren is a phenomenal wrestler, and his pressure is relentless, and it was interesting to see Joe pick a guy like Ben's brain, because his mentality is just, you can tell it's just something else, man. Wrestlers have something, man. They've got something going on up there. They've got that screw loose that just lets them push and push and push, and they're gonna outwork you. They're tough, right? They're gritty. I feel like if you wrestle, and like, he probably reaped tons of benefits from that. So just remember, when you're watching fucking Derek Brunson fight the best grappler, maybe the best, I don't want to say the best grappler, because I think like Khabib is probably the best grappler, but the best jiu-jitsu practitioner in MMA, in Jacare, in my opinion, he's the best. Fabricio is probably up there somewhere, right? A lot of guys, Damian Maia. But Jacare's jiu-jitsu, when he goes to the ground, is something to behold, and he's so fucking powerful. Just remember that Brunson could have been a cheerleader. You know what I mean? Might not even be fighting Jacare this weekend. But yeah, Jacare hasn't fought since he lost to Whittaker in April of 2017. And before that, he beat Tim Boetsch via submission, beat Vitor Belfort via KO, and then he lost a close fight to Yoel Romero. Jacare is one of the top guys, man, so that just shows you how fucking, for a while, Whittaker just seemed like a guy who I didn't really think he could beat those top-tier guys like Romero. And then now he's beat Romero and he's beat Souza, who are arguably the two best fighters at 185, like, I know Bisping held the title and all that, but, like, using the, I'm going to get a lot of shit for this, using the eye test, just the eye, like, watching a guy fight and his potential, I think Luke Rockhold is the best 185er that I've ever seen fight. I mean, he's fucking incredible. He's just, for whatever reason, AKA is cursed with an injury bug. And it's a damn shame because, man, the talent that they have at that camp is insane. But regardless, I mean, Jacare and Yoel Romero are undoubtedly top 5 guys in the world and probably top 3. And for Whittaker to beat both of those guys just shows you how fucking good he is. So it's a bummer that he fell off the card with Rockhold because I was looking forward to that fight. I'm just excited to see Rockhold fight again. Like I said, I'm going to get shit for that, but I really do. Like, I know that he hasn't accomplished as much as Silva, but Rockhold, man, when you watch Rockhold fight, and he's got, his kicks are, like, if you go back and watch the Weidman fight, his kicks were so much more powerful than Weidman's, and he has a relentless top game. If Rockhold gets on top of you, man, it's hard to get back up. He's so good at controlling you and just imposing his will on you. So, anyway, got carried away talking about Rockhold. This is a big fight in the 185-pound division because if Brunson can win, Brunson's kind of crazy the way he throws punches, which leaves him open for some counters. And Jacare is no fucking fool on the feet. Like, I know he's known for his submissions and stuff and his groundwork, but he can throw his hands around. So Brunson's got to be careful with those big swooping punches that he throws that leaves himself. And he probably knows that. He got knocked out by Jacare in Strikeforce, like I said. Like, he probably knows to keep things tight and crisp. This is a tough fight to pick, too. Because I wonder where Jacare's head's at after losing to Whittaker. And he hasn't fought in over a year. Like, people who say ring rust don't matter. It's not really ring rust at this point, I guess, right? It's been like 7 months. So it's been a while, though. Like, that's quite a bit of time to stay out of the octagon. But there's an argument, though, that when you get knocked out like that, maybe that is the amount of time that you need to take off. Like, maybe this 3-month gap that fighters give themselves, especially after losing and taking a lot of damage in their fights, maybe that's not enough. So maybe this approach will be smart by Jacare. I'm excited to see what he looks like coming back off that loss. I like Jacare in this fight. I like him to get... I see Brunson overextending on... I think he might hit Jacare with something meaningful, and then he'll get excited and overextend, and it'll open up a small little window that'll let Jacare capitalize, take the fight to the ground, and end it with a submission. I think that once the fight goes to the ground, you're going to see Jacare just slice through the guard of Brunson and just put on a clinic. Brunson could absolutely catch him and knock him out. This is, like I said, this is going to be a really interesting fight for a lot of reasons. Not necessarily, I'm not going to say it's striker versus grappler. It is. I mean, when it boils down, it is. But like I said, Jacare, he's going to have some confidence throwing his fists at Brunson. Like, he's not going to be afraid to do that. But I like Jacare. Like I said, I think Brunson will get excited in some way and he'll leave just this tiny opening, and that's all you need against a guy like Jacare, and he'll capitalize on it. All right, let's go back through, recap the picks real quick and short. I'm taking Drew Dober over Frank Camacho. I just think he's going to be too much on his feet, all that Muay Thai experience, and then coming off a win over Berkman to get your confidence rolling again. I don't think Camacho will... You might see him weather a bit of a storm. Like, he's a tough guy. He might get through that. He might get through the whole fight without getting knocked out or anything. I just think he'll get outpointed if he does. For Camacho, I think you got to get the fight to the ground. Try to dominate it down there, because I think you're going to be really outclassed on your feet. Gillespie, I'm taking Gillespie. Like I said, first off, I'm biased towards him. He wrestled at Edinburgh. Guy, I think he hangs out in the Pittsburgh. He's always posting Instagram videos of him fishing. I think he fishes in like the Pittsburgh area a lot and stuff. But guy that I like, 10-0. Like I said, 3-0 in the UFC so far. Really fun guy to watch out for in the lightweight division. I mean, 155. To me, the reason that 155 is so good, it's like the perfect weight class, right? Like, that's the perfect weight where the cardio and the skill and the power, like, they all come together to form this perfect storm. And I think that's what makes the fights down there so exciting. Like they don't gas out. They still have to, like, heavyweights you can get away with like slipping up on your technique a little bit because you got so much power behind you. I'm not in any way saying that heavyweights don't rely on technique. They absolutely 100% do. But what you saw with Stipe, he's able to just like lay on a guy, and at 155 pounds, you can't really just sit there and lay on a guy. You know what I mean? Like, you're still only 155 pounds. Like, a guy can, there's a point of like diminishing returns there, right? Where you can get bucked off a little bit easier if you're lighter, even if the guy you're fighting is lighter. Yeah, man, 155 is just so interesting right now. And there's so many talented fighters there. I'm taking Fili over Bermudez, but in a fight that, like I said, common sense will tell you this, but whoever implements their game plan better, I think, is going to run away with this fight. I like Fili because I think he's going to give... I don't think that Bermudez is going to be able to close the distance well enough to take Fili down when he wants to. You might see him get a couple. I'd expect Fili to get back up to his feet, and I just think you're going to see Bermudez struggle with the reach that Fili's going to put out there. And I think he's going to start hitting him with the jab early and start hitting him with some combos, throwing the kicks out there, and it's going to just be enough to keep Bermudez at bay and frustrate him. And maybe start going for some ugly shots that let Fili really start touching him up with some combos. No pun intended. Andre Fili's name is Touchy, if you guys didn't know. And then I'm going to take Jacare over Brunson. If Brunson wins, I think he's got to knock Jacare out. I just think that, like I said, I think like there's an excellent chance that Jacare could get clipped, but I just think that like Brunson's wild when he fights, man. Maybe he'll calm it down for this one, but when he starts throwing his hands, I expect Jacare to capitalize on him overextending, get the fight to the ground, and then finish it with a submission win. What else is I think Super Bowl weekend there's another card. I think that's Anders, who was a linebacker at Alabama when they won the national championship in 2009, I think, but he's fighting Lyoto Machida, who just got in trouble for all the steroid stuff. But like I said, that Super Bowl weekend, I might roll one out for that. I didn't get Tanner on this week. I think he's in Atlanta right now. So whenever he gets back and gets settled in, we'll try to get him on and do the Jiu-Jitsu episode. I'm excited to talk to him about all that. But I think that wraps this one up, guys. Thank you for listening. Bye.